So, good afternoon. After I think 2 speeches, which was 3D printing and forensic science, I'm going to talk about a very soft subject. And the subject is leadership. Very often I'm told to speak on women in leadership. I don't see how that's different. I'm a woman, I'm a leader. So I'm going to leave that out and just speak about leadership. It's been 15 years before a crowd of students. 15 years ago, I started my career as an English professor, teaching a bunch of hormonal students, most definitely not interested in classical literature or poetry. They were just there to, the mandatory attendance regulations. And I was there too, out of an obligation to my father. But that's at the end. I'm going to tell you a story. Today I want to talk about qualities of leadership that are most often neglected in the larger definitions of leadership. The stereotypical definitions of leadership are charisma, conviction, courage, larger than life sounding words. We all like that because that's nice. That's a nice definition for a leader. But I want to focus on qualities today that often don't get their share of limelight, like nobility, mentoring, and motivation. Although I must admit these days, mentoring seems to be the new poster boy in the boardrooms. Everyone's a mentor today. A teacher affects eternity. Henry Adams. Does a leader affect eternity? A teacher can never tell where his influence stops. And pretty much leaders today, as they mold people, the co-workers, people that they work with, they are influencing them and turning them into different people. Now, let's not be harsh on leaders. The qualities I mentioned, like charisma, courage, conviction, they're important because they drive results. They do. But often, it's a trap. Because it drives results, you don't tend to look beyond it. You then fit into the stereotypical mold of just being a leader that is so often seen today in books, quotes, quotations. And most leaders are charismatic, right? So there is something that all of us believe that's the stereotypical mold of a leader. So what really is a leader? I mean, all of this is important. I've already said that. But what really is a leader? So I'm sure most of you have read the Secrets of Effective Leadership. I'm sure it's a book that most people read. And the definition there, which actually got me thinking, was the ultimate leader is one who develops his people to surpass him or her, both in ability and knowledge. What does that sound like? To me, it sounds like a teacher. The only benchmark a teacher has today is the success of his wards, the success of his students. There is no other benchmark for a good teacher. A teacher is a guide. A teacher teaches from a sense of nobility, rarely from a position of authority. A teacher will let you do your assignments, but give you the right inputs. Rarely does a teacher tell you, don't take an exam, you just failed one, you should never take the exam again. Have you heard that? No. They motivate you again, say, okay, so I think you can do this again. Do leaders do that? Do we as leaders allow people to make mistakes? Do we as leaders guide them and not just dictate? Do we as leaders then allow people to come on their own? And that is something that I would like to discuss today. Now, like I said before, the larger than life sounding words, which is courage, charisma, conviction, spirit of entrepreneurship. They all are important because they drive people to drive results. But do they then drive people with a sense of self-worth, motivation, and a sense of allowing people to come in on their own? Do they? So what does? In 1940s, one of the first executives to be paid $1 million, this is what he said. He said, the greatest asset I possess is the fact that I'm able to develop my people to the best of their ability. This executive was Charles Schwab. There is no doubt that Charles Schwab was one of the most successful businessmen of the 20th century. And he's openly admitted that the fact that he could develop his people, the fact that he could motivate them, the fact that he could get them to believe in the goals was the only cornerstone of his success. What greater motivation? What greater motivation for a leader when you have your people who work with you equally enthused about the goal as you are? So motivation is a large part of what leaders need to do, but quite often forget in the humdrum of everyday business life. GE is known as the leadership factory. We all know GE. I mean, I hear the room is full of engineers. So GE takes mentoring very seriously. GE has all the senior executives in the company mentor, cross-functional training. They are encouraged, rewarded, and often recognized for developing people who are less experienced, junior colleagues, and not necessarily in their own departments. Now, what is this? I mean, like I said, mentoring is this new buzzword. But really, what is mentoring? Let's think for a minute. Mentoring is between two people. It fosters a culture of trust and respect. More importantly, it fosters a culture of teaching and learning. You're learning from somebody who's far more experienced than you, and the senior colleague is teaching you because he wants you to learn from his experiences. In today's society, if there was a list of endangered behavioral characteristics, like we have endangered species, rising to the top of the list would be nobility. I read the statement in an article by Jane Stanner, and it stuck with me ever since. What is nobility? A teacher is defined as a man of learning and nobility. So let's look at some of the synonyms of nobility. It's virtue, magnanimity, generosity, courage, integrity, honesty. It's all of that. Everything is who a teacher is. I'm going to quote an example from Dr. Kalam. He spoke at the Cambridge University at the Center for India and Global Business. In 1979, when India was preparing to launch its satellite into orbit, it was unsuccessful. And the then Professor Dhawan was the center director of this center, ISRO, and he took complete responsibility for the failure. Point to note, Dr. Kalam was the mission director. It was not Professor Dhawan's responsibility directly, yet he took complete responsibility. The next year, when India successfully launched the satellite into orbit, Dr. Dhawan called Dr. Kalam and said, I don't want to attend the media conference. You should. And share the success story with the media. Thus, he gave the complete credit of the success of that mission to Dr. Kalam. And Dr. Kalam quoted this as one of the most important qualities in a leader, which is nobility. Great leaders in the world who have not been able to develop this attribute have fallen from grace. This example of nobility really stayed with me, and I think it meets all the synonyms that we just discussed. Now, as I wrote this TED script, I struggled with mnemonics because I wanted to sound good. So I had courage, charisma, conviction. I was trying to find the right fit for mentoring, motivation, something else, something else. And I said, no, I had to put nobility in. Because it's that one redeeming factor that separates great leaders from good ones. I've come a long way from a nervous teacher who was much younger 15 years ago, egoistic, with a wrong sense of entitlement, all wrong for a teacher. Same applies for a leader. And I've realized that I found myself in the trap of stereotypical situations where you're bound to act a certain way. Because that's how it's always been. That's how leaders are seen to be. I'm painfully aware of some of the failures that I've had when I've not been able to develop the qualities of mentoring, motivation, or nobility. It is a constant struggle as a leader while driving business results to be able to build on these qualities. But I think these are extremely important qualities, more so because as you leave the campus and you go out there, that danger of thinking that leadership fits into a perfect, perception is very, very large. I was actually talking interestingly at lunch to your director, and she said, most people here are engineers, so they're engineered to think in a certain way. And the perceptions that people have about leaders are very fixed today because there are books, the way leaders are sold are more on the personality than on the lesser sounding qualities that don't gain their share in limelight. I would like to share an anecdote from my first day as a teacher at college. So I was straight out of postgrad school. My father, very casually over a cup of coffee, committed to his friend and a very reputed college professor that my daughter, to make her time worthwhile, will teach English as a part-time teacher to undergrad students. Now, I froze, but I'd rather stammer and stutter through a lecture than say no to my father, because up till then I had stage fright. I entered class and I had to really teach them because there was no other way. My father had committed. And they didn't want to be in the class. I didn't want to be in the class. That made two of us. So there was no way out, really. But I took the first liberation towards my fears. And I took off my glasses. I couldn't see without them, which was the best thing, because if I can't see anything, then it's great. So I took off my glasses, and I actually did that. This is a true story. I took off my glasses, and I taught poetry. And I knew my subjects, so I had to be confident. But the thing is, a fear is a very, very funny thing. So you have to overcome your fears to let your true personality shine. So I took off my glasses and started to teach to these children, much like the poet himself, half blind. And I taught Milton and ironically the poem's name was also on his blindness, to a bunch of students who listened in pin drop silence. It's been a long journey, and the reason I chose this topic today was also because I believe that as you'll step out in the world tomorrow, all of you are going to be leaders. You will lead teams, small, big. You will work with junior colleagues. I hope I'm able to inspire some of you to go out there and remember the qualities that really make you a complete leader. That was a motivating factor for me. And the other thing is that I've come a long way again, from a nervous teacher to a brave leader. And I'd like to thank one man, my father, an extremely reputed great professor, for instilling in me all the values and taking away the fear of teaching a classroom full of students. I wish all of you an amazing journey into the world of leadership, and I hope someday I'm able to work with some of you. Thank you.